What's really happening in the real estate market? We're going to talk about that right now. Today, we're going to be talking about the Richmond Hill real estate markets. Okay, a lot has changed in the month, so let's just dive right into it. Okay, so the first one is the government introduced the foreign buyer ban and increased it from 20% to 25%. Okay, so this is going to impact, foreign buyers, number one. But the second one is the federal government now said there is a 2-year ban for all foreign buyers as well. Okay. So, if you're looking to buy a home right now and you're international, you're not really a Canadian citizen, you don't have permanent residence, then it will be very, very difficult. There are ways of getting around it, and I'm not going to get into it right now. But this will hamper demand for sure. Okay. Also, the government also announced that they will be, increasing the additional supply. So they're allowing 3 dwellings per one home, one dwelling, legally wise, and that they're overriding the municipal governments. So, for example, you got the primary residence, but now they're allowing you to rent the basements and also having another dwelling in their backyard. So, that's going to help achieve their goal of having over 1 million homes, because that's what the government wanted. Okay, and this is how they're going to do it. Now, there are other other changes that the government has done, but I'm not going to get into that right now as this is the market watch. So feel free to, watch the next video. That's going to be linked below. Okay. So another thing we need to think about too is the interest rates. It's gone up in October and now it's expected to go up again by 50 to 75 basis points in December, despite the increase in job rates, the jobs added in Canada. Okay, there's over 108,000 jobs that were added. Most of them were from manufacturing, and hospitality. Okay, now another thing we need to consider too is thinking about the asset classes that we're comparing, because media likes to compare how everything's crashing, all February figures. But if you compare it to other asset classes like stocks and crypto, it actually outperformed them very well. Okay, so for example, the Nasdaq Composite, it actually went down, okay, significantly. We're talking about 29% decrease, and the crypto market it dropped by 68%. Okay, but overall in Richmond Hill, okay, on a year-to-year basis, it only dropped by about 10%. Okay, so 10%. Okay, even if you compare an all-time high for Richmond Hill, okay, on average though for Richmond Hill, the peak was in January. Okay, it wasn't February, it was actually January if you compare all types of homes. Okay, and that dropped by 19%, which is all-time high. So if you think about it, then even taking an all-time high and comparing it to on a yearly basis of the other asset classes, you're still outperformed them. Okay, despite what media is trying to say to you. So today we're going to be talking more, and moving forward, we're going to dive more into the numbers. Okay, coming from a banking background where I deal with thousands and thousands of different data points, you can tell that you can create a story for yourself, okay, based on how you interpret the data. So for me, I always want to educate you, and you decide on how you want to interpret the data. So first, we're going to be comparing on a month-to-month basis, okay, from October to September in this case. Then we're going to compare to the peak times, okay, depending on the type of home, January, February, or March, okay, in Richmond Hill homes. Then we're going to compare it on a yearly basis of October 2021. And then we're going to compare it to the pre-pandemic numbers, okay? So let's just dive right into it. So in October of last month, 138 sales, 404, active listings. The average price was 1.31 million. The type of market is 2.93. It's still a seller's market, okay? A seller's market is defined when the type of market is less than 5, okay? So from 0 to 5, it's seller's market. From 5 to 6, it's more of a balanced market. And then from 6 onwards, it becomes a buyer's market, okay? Now you can see that it's actually starting to transition to more of a more of a balanced market if you look at the different time periods. But interesting to note is that it was still more of a balanced market pre-pandemic for Richmond Hill homes. Okay, so comparing on a month-to-month basis, number of sales that happened dropped by 10%. Okay, in terms of the active listings, it stayed relatively the same, but the home prices dropped by about 8%. Okay, and the type of market is still, again, still a seller's market, and it took 4 additional days to sell a home in Richmond Hill. For the peak times, okay, so obviously, sales was a lot more, 207. There was a lot less listings, only 160 listings versus 404. Okay, that's 153% decrease. Also, too, you can look at the average sold price, which is about a 19% decrease, okay, of 1.6 million. Type of market is still heavily favored the sellers at the time. And it took only 13 days to actually sell a Richmond Hill home. Okay, now looking on a year-to-year basis, right, it was 60% less homes that transacted compared to last year. And in terms of number of listings, there was 18% less listings, and home prices were about 10% more in last year. Okay, in terms of the type of market, it was still a seller's market at the time, less than one, and it took only 2 weeks to sell average Richmond Hill home. Okay, now if you look at pre-pandemic numbers, right, there was still more sales of 260, more active listings. Okay, the prices was 22% less. Okay, in terms of the type of market, it was more of a balanced market, and it took 28 days versus 21 days to actually sell a home. Now here's the interesting part, right, and why I think that the real estate market is not going to actually crash like what the media is saying. Okay, so first off, there's more sales. Yes, that's happened. Yes, you're right, which is the demand side, but there's also a lot more listings that happen. Okay, 48% more listings compared to last month. So active listings is supply. So demand and supply, you compare it, but the price has still gone up by 22%. So how does that work? Right? And it was still, at the time, it was still more of a balanced market. So we're still recovering, we're still catching up, right? And November figures, if it might be more different, it might be more of a balanced market still. Okay, but comparing it to pre-pandemic numbers, that's not the case at all. Okay, and it took 7 additional days to sell. So let's just dive into more of detached homes. Okay, so October, 58 sales, 197 listings, 1.863 million was the average price. Type of market was 3.4, and it took 20 days to sell. Okay, comparing on a month-to-month basis, there's 76 sales that happened. Okay, 24% decrease. Okay, which is the positive component. Okay, and 8% more listings. Okay, in September. Now, if you compare to the lows, the sales, right? The worst sales was actually October, where there's 174 sales that happened. It wasn't February, it's actually October. Okay, in terms of the number of listings, there's 574 listings in Richmond Hill detaches. Okay, that's 66% more. So that's a big difference in terms of active listings. Okay, so that's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. There's less listings, or less supply that's happening. Okay, now in terms of obviously the biggest decrease in price, it was a February, right? It was 2.15 million. Okay, a 14% decrease. Again, it still outperformed the 2 other asset classes, right? Now, if you compare it to pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up 30%. Okay, and that's really interesting to note. Now, looking at the type of market, right? It's still a seller's market. Okay, 3.4. Okay, it still hasn't hit the 5 barrier. Okay, and it is a big jump though. If you think about it, on a month-to-month basis, is 2.8, 21% jump. But if you compare to the pre-pandemic numbers, which is even a bigger jump, a bigger change, actually 4.16. So it was still more of a balanced market in 2019 than it is now. Okay, for detaches. For the biggest change, more of a seller's market, was actually in October 2021 of 1.32. In terms of days on market, again, it took, the fastest time to sell a home was in February of 9 days, and the slowest, the time period that took you to sell the most was October 2019 of 33 days. Okay, now jumping into the semi-detaches, right? These figures, you gotta note that there's less transactions that happen, so the numbers will be skewed. Okay, so 8 transactions that happened, 13 listings, 1.208 million, 1.63 days in terms of type of market, still a seller's market. Okay, in 20 days when it comes to selling a Richmond Hill semi-detached home. Now, interesting to note, okay, the type of market, again, is a big jump. Okay, it was 64% jump from in terms of type of market, right? So type of market simply just calculated by sales and active listings at the time. So it's 4.5. Okay, it was approaching quickly from a balanced market. Now it jumped down to more of a seller's market, right? For 4.5 to 1.63. Now, in terms of the October 2021 figures, still a very seller's market, very heavily dominant. In terms of the biggest decrease, February had the most sales, 23 sales, which is very interesting to note here. And obviously the price dropped the most, right? It was 1.44 million from semi-detaches in Richmond Hill, now it dropped down to 1.208. Now, obviously, if you compare that number to pre-pandemic numbers, you're still well above, you're up almost 50%, right? 813,000 for a semi-detached in Richmond Hill pre-pandemic, though. So moving on to the Richmond Hill townhouses, right? So in October, 23 transactions, 38 listings, 1.23 average sold price, type of market 1.65, and in terms of days on market, 8 days. Okay, so that was a very big transaction, a big jump compared on a month-to-month basis, right? Where it took 24 days to sell an average Richmond Hill townhouse. Okay, yet the sales, it decreased though, right? There's 23 sales that happened versus the previous month, which was 29. Okay, in October 2021, they had 60 sales, which is the most. Okay, and now also too, if you look at the active listings, there are a lot less listings in October 2021, which was only 20 active listings, less supply at the time period. Okay, if you look at pre-pandemic numbers, it was 76 listings, so pretty much half. Okay, and yet despite all this information, the average sold price did go up by 44%. Okay, it's still a seller's market. Don't get that confused, regardless of the time periods that we're looking at. Now, the condo townhouses in Richmond Hill, there's 11 transactions, 37 active listings, 907,000 for the average price. Type of market was still 3.36, and days on market 20. So there's, in the month-to-month basis, there's a big jump, right? There's only 3 transactions that happened in Richmond Hill for condo townhouses. Okay, and compared to all-time highs, it's 15 before, wasn't much of a difference in terms of figure-wise, not percentage-wise. In terms of active listings, right, there's more listings, a lot more listings, 37 versus 23 compared to September 2022. In February, there was really nobody was listing. Okay, there's only 8 listings. Okay, versus 37. So that's a big jump. In terms of the average price, right? Average price, the peak was February, 1.12 million for the average condo townhouse. In terms of pre-pandemic, you're up 41% still. In terms of type of market, right? I wouldn't spend too much emphasis or focus too much on the 7.67 buyer's market, because there's only 3 transactions that happened in September. Okay, what I would look at though is the October 2021 figures, which was 0.8. Okay, so 0.8, there's 320% increase, okay, from the peak of the type of market. It was a heavily dominant seller's market at the time, but now it's transitioned more into a balanced market. Last but definitely not least, we got the condo apartments. Okay, so condo apartments, there's 36 transactions, 128 listings, 642,000 average price, 3.56 type of market. Okay, still a seller's market, and 31 days on the days on market. Okay, so in terms of the peak wise, sales, I want to say here there was at the most 60% more transactions that happened, okay, in February. In terms of the previous lease, which is the previous month, which is 40 sales. Okay, so it did decrease. Sales did decrease on a month-to-month basis. In terms of active listings, February, you had less listings in February than you had in October, but stayed relatively the same on a month-to-month basis. Okay. In terms of the average price, obviously the February was an all-time high, which is 772,000. But pre-pandemic numbers, you're still up almost 30%, okay, where it was 498,000. And the type of market, it still stayed the same. It's still a seller's market. However, it's heading towards more of a balanced market, even comparing it to the pre-pandemic figures. Okay. Now, it is taking longer for condo apartments in Richmond Hill to sell. Okay, 31 days. Previously, the all-time high was also 30 days, okay, which is the previous month. And when the market was very hot, it only took 7 days to sell. Okay. So what's good to note here is the following. Okay, despite the interest rates going higher compared to October 2022 versus October 2019, okay, that, you know, home prices have gone up substantially. Okay, so if you're a home buyer, you're waiting on October 2019, you know, not only is it costing you more to buy a home, but it's also costing you more interest rates in terms of percentage wise. Okay, so it's actually getting more difficult to actually buy a home, okay, in Richmond Hill. Despite, you know, there's the number of listings, it's interesting to note that as well. Like, you know, it's fluctuating a lot. There's a lot less listings that are happening now in October 2022 versus, you know, October 2019. Okay. So if you find this information useful, right, make sure you subscribe, like it, you know, share this with your friend and family. You know, make sure you tell them, hey, you know, it's still a seller's market. You know, during one of my transactions, you know, in the negotiating phase in one of my deals, you know, a buyer agent actually came to me and said, hey, we're offering you this amount. And the reason why is because it's a buyer's market. And needless to say, you know, the conversation didn't end well for this agent. And, you know, we sold it for a, you know, higher than asking price. Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you want more detailed information about you and your situation, you know, your property, let me know, because these numbers are for the city, but it comes down to, you know, your fixtures, your type of home, your location, you know, the age, right? These factors will heavily influence these metrics. Okay. So these are just general, but if you want something more specific, feel free to reach out. Take care. Bye-bye.